Call the meeting to order. Our first part of the agenda is public notice. So I'll read the public notice for the record. Town of Farmington Inland Wetlands Commission notice is hereby given that the Inland Wetlands Commission will hold a public hearing on Wednesday, March 18th at 7 p.m. at the Town Hall Council Chambers, 1 Monteith Drive, on the following application. Earthlight Technologies application for regulated activity within wetlands and upland review area to install solar array at 70 Patterson Park Road. At the hearing, interested persons may be heard and written communication received. Copies of this proposal are on file in the Planning Department, Town Hall, Farmington, Connecticut. Dated Farmington, Connecticut, 28th day of February 2020, Inland Wetlands Commission. And just for the record, persons interested also had a number to call in on the public number, correct?
Correct. I just want to note for the record that Emily Brick has joined us. Emily?
Yes,
Emily,
I am.
perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, I had a hard time reading the app.
No problem. Has anyone else, any other commission member joined in that I did not acknowledge previously? Okay. Was everyone able to hear Ned read the legal notice?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. With that, Earthlight, I will turn it over to you. I'm going to get rid of the attendance list, and I'm going to turn it over to you. As you're going through, if you need me to scroll through to anything, just please ask me to do so, and I'm happy to accommodate.
Thank you, Shannon. You want to turn to page 1? Perfect. So, Earthlight, thank you, Commission, for hearing this presentation virtually. And I appreciate the efforts that you've made to have this meeting go off. Some towns have canceled, and I do appreciate the effort you've made. So, Earthlight is proposing to install an 875 kW AC solar array to the west of this building. And if you go to the second page, please.
Yep.
On this page, you can see the wetlands that have been delineated, and roughly half of this project is going to be in the upland area and half is going to be in the wetland area. The wetland area is currently a mowed lawn, and when I'm finished speaking, George Logan, the soil scientist, is going to speak in much greater detail about any impacts or any improvements we will be making to that wetland area. We will be installing sedimentation controls along the edge of the construction zone, between the construction zone and the permanent wetlands. Permanent might not be the right term, but George will talk a little bit more about the distinction between those two. Our construction impact, which will be temporary, will be a mini excavator for the conduit trenching, skid steer, lull, and pickup trucks. And the quantifiable areas for temporary impacts, which would be just that trenching, is 1,250 square feet, and the permanent impact is 580 square feet. If you could go to the last page, please, Shannon. These are just simple details showing the trenching, which is 2 foot wide, and showing the driven posts, which will be going 6 feet in, which were used to quantify those temporary and permanent impact areas. The plan for the installation is to avoid the wet spring, and the goal is to be installing this in the summer or the fall, but the exact timing of this is going to be partially conditioned upon when we get all of our approvals and any other delays that may occur due to the recent outbreaks that are affecting businesses across the state. And the plan is to meet with town officials at the site at the commencing of construction, to review the construction schedule and determine the best location for tracking pads. So at this point, I'd like to turn things over to George Logan.
George, I think you may have muted yourself. You've got to unmute. Yeah, I can't. There we go.
Can you hear me now?
There we go. Yep. If you mute yourself, I can't unmute you from here. If I mute you, then I can unmute you.
Okay, I have no idea what I did, but anyhow, I think what I did is I pressed chat. So instead of, can everyone hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay, so again, my name is George Logan. I'm Principal of REMA Ecological Services, professional wetland scientist and registered soil scientist. There's a couple of reports that I'll be referring to that are already in the record. One is what we'll call a wetlands assessment, summary of findings. That was back from January 31st of 2020, and then there's a subsequent letter that I'll refer in a minute. Figure 1 basically shows you the rough location of where this property is in relationship to the highway, in relationship to Batterson Park Pond. And what you can see, there's a blue line that runs parallel to the interstate, and that, according to the USGS, is a perennial watercourse that flows and is associated with a wetland that I'll be describing in a moment. Eventually, that turns in an easterly direction. Large portions of it have been ditched and flows into Batterson Park Road. If you go to figure number 2, which is the next one, that gives you a view of this site from, I think, back in the summer of 2019. It shows the study area. The things that you can probably see immediately is that there is a mowed lawn that's been maintained, and I'll explain how long that's been maintained in a bit. But you can also see in the close to the highway in the upper right-hand corner of the study area is this blue haze of a signature, and that indicates a Phragmites patch which has been growing over the years. Then if we go to figure A, which is the next one, what that will show you is the wetland delineation that was done. This delineation was done back in January, and we have an on-site soil investigation wetland delineation report with the same date that has also been submitted into the record and is attached to the wetlands assessment. What this figure shows you is roughly where the wetlands and the uplands are. You can see that there's an upland island which was mapped rather than delineated because it was not critical to what we were doing because we're avoiding it. It also shows you in a spring of 2006 aerial photograph the signatures of the wetlands towards the highway, which are not mowed and which are a combination of an emergent cover type, a scrub shrub cover type, and some forested off to the south, which you can kind of barely see. So it's a mosaic. You can also see, if you see it, you can also see some deer paths, believe it or not, and some water courses. If you go to the next figure, it will show you what our federal government, based on their soil mapping, believes is there as far as soil types. And those soil types, the 308 that you see there, they're calling a eudorthan smooth, which is the next page. And then 306 is eudorthan's urban land complex. So they don't even have a delineated or defined mapping unit for a wetland here. That's further to the south, and the little triangle that you see is a 6, and that is in Wilbraham-Menlo soils, which are actually the soils that we have here in the undisturbed portions of the wetland that's in the mowed lawn. Now, some of it, I'd say probably about half of the mowed wetland soils are actually disturbed, which means they've been graded and or there's some minimal fill on them. The rest of it is not so. If you go to the next figure, which is figure 5, and we're going to start in reverse, that shows you the study area, the overall property, if you will, in 1965 before the highway was there, and you can see that the area that we're talking about was basically a hayfield. Then you go to the next photograph, which is the 1970 aerial photograph, and now you can see the building built. Some of the parking areas are being put in, so it looks like this is in progress. So some of it probably was started to be built in the late 1960s, and then we have continual development in 1970. Then if you go to the next aerial photograph, a little more recent, what it shows you a couple of things. One, that this is, with the exception of the most recently constructed parking lot, which you will see when we go back to the other picture, everything's in place. And lo and behold, the property owner at that time, probably sometime between 1970 and 1986, we're not exactly sure, actually was mowing part of what today is a non-mowed area towards the highway. So you can see the trees are missing. If you backed up in the aerial photograph before, you'd be able to see that. You can see there was some dark, probably some cedars in there, and those were all gone. The next is a series of photographs that I took of the site, just to give you an idea. Some of them are December of 2019, some are from more recently from January of 2020, and kind of gives you an idea as you scroll through of what the wetland, the mowed wetland looks versus there's your Bank of America sign with the little upland island that we talked about. Going further down, here's the interface between what's mowed and towards the highway. You can see the signature of the Phragmites, and between the Phragmites and the edge of the mowed area is actually a wet meadow, which actually is not too bad. It has some diversity, moderate diversity to it. As we go on the photographs, this is the northern portion of the study area, and there's our surveyor's stake. Here I'm sitting in the wet meadow in the northern portion of the wet meadow that's not disturbed, looking towards the area that's mowed, and you can maybe see some soft brush and some other wetland plants. Going further on, again, another view of the Phragmites patch in the meadow, and then going on, it's a full view of the Phragmites in the back. And then the next photograph is taken, I'm in the shrub portion of the wetland, and I'm looking at some alders into the wet meadow that's mowed. And then just a picture of the typical soils of the bee horizon within the wetlands. And as you can see, it's pretty distinctive modeling. The next few pictures are from January 15th, and again, they're very similar. Just wanted, it was a little more light, so that was helpful, so we can keep going. And I can keep going. Some of the pictures kind of give you an idea of the wet meadow. And this is my, photo 14 is my first flag that I delineated, that I put down, and you can see I'm in a more of a forested area. Some of the trees, actually, we have swamp white oak tree. And as we go on, one of the things that, again, another picture, this is flag A2. I'm heading towards the lawn, if you will. This is a typical picture of the mosaic within the wetland that we're not touching, since we're not really cutting any trees down. The next picture in 17 is the ditched watercourse that comes from the north. I'm kind of facing northerly here. You can see it has about 154 acres of watershed, 79% of it plus is urbanized. There's almost 34% of impervious surfaces. Water quality is not expected to be very good. But a lot of the highway comes in it, and some of the, on the other side of the highway, some commercial, some office buildings. So going on, just off-site, the brook turns in a easterly direction. Again, it's ditched, and this is the part that heads towards Madison Park Pond. And then just one final picture to show you that there's actually a sewer easement that goes through the on-site wetlands in that corner of the site. I think that's it for photos. The next slide is just to give you an idea that we have a wetland delineation characterization field form. As you go on, you'll see that the next page has the typical vegetation. Hold on, let me get rid of this. The typical vegetation that we can see. We have some invasives, but if you see under the herbs, even in being off season, I was able to find a good amount of diversity. So that's that as far as the next page shows you your typical functions and values analysis that we look at. We try to figure out, you know, this wetland, which altogether is probably about 8.5 acres or so, contiguous off-site and on-site portions, including our lawn, provides certain functions at a better than average, if you will, degree. So these we'll call the primary functions. You can see flood flow alteration, obviously that's obvious. Sediment toxic pathogen retention, nutrient removal transformation, that's because of what the opportunity you have, but also the fact that you have an urbanized watershed. And then of course we have wildlife habitat as a principal function. So going into, we talked a little bit about the impacts, but as you might remember, there are some permanent impacts, and that's really just the stakes that go into the ground to support the solar arrays, and that's a limited amount of square feet, but most of the square footage has to do with the trenching. So 500 square feet of permanent direct wetland impact from the posts and the piles and the perimeter fence, and then 1,250 square feet of temporary impact for our utility trenches and proposed equipment pad that lead to the equipment pad, which is outside of the wetland. So for mitigation, what we're doing here, realizing, by the way, that this lawn, for the most part, we believe has been chemically treated over the years, and the reason I say that is because I see no weeds whatsoever. This is quite a lush and well-developed lawn. You can't have that unless you do something year after year. And of course, we have absolutely no productivity as far as a wetland is concerned at all. So what we have proposed as far as mitigation is concerned is you see that table A, which is specialized seed mix, and I'll return to that in a moment, because first thing I should probably tell you is, apart from the direct impacts, which are limited, especially since the temporary impact are just that, they will be returned to a wet meadow. As far as erosion sedimentation control, we talked about putting a silt sock at the far western end of our development. We like that often better than just the silt fence. That's much better. But what we have here is, which makes it the potential risk for adverse impacts from erosion sedimentation to be minimal, is the fact that we have appropriate controls, but also the dominant soils are moderate in erodibility. They're not low, but they're moderate. But the bigger thing is that we have a very gentle to nearly flat terrain throughout the site. So moving soil during a storm will be not an issue in my view. Again, we don't remove any vegetation, so we don't have really any habitat loss, if you will. And then as far as no impacts to hydrology of the wetland, the hydrology of the wetland will remain the same. And we can't really talk about long-term potential water quality impacts because for the most part, the solar array, once constructed, is generally considered to be inert. So back to mitigation, our thought was to seed with a diverse specialized seed mix. Now, if you look at the seed mix, and I think I mentioned that at one of our meetings, what we've done here is we've customized the seed mix, both in the, if you will, the percentages of each species, but also picking the species, making sure that there includes shade-tolerant species, because obviously some will be under the shade of, or at least the temporary shade of solar arrays as the sun goes around. We picked species that will flower and or reach maturity at vegetative heights that were less than 30 inches, realizing that we can't get them more than 30 inches because that would interfere with the panels. And also, we attempted to have at least a moderate pollinator value of the species that we selected and that you see here. We figured that this is going to take at least 2 growing seasons to establish, possibly a third. We'll see how that goes. We would be involved for my company to make sure that this progresses to the point where we can say that we have actually a wetland enhancement by providing a more diverse cover type than we have now, and that wouldn't be too difficult at all, as you can realize. Initially, what we would do before the arrays are installed is to York rake the entire area and then seed it, and then we will have a subsequent, a secondary seeding once the arrays are in overall, and also we will be putting some little top dressing if necessary, and we will also bring in some annual ryegrass to have a quick establishment. What we're trying to do here is to overwhelm, if you will, the turf grasses, so we don't have those take off by doing a seeding that's a little heavier than we would otherwise do it. So that's part of the plan. And then this will happen, we'll probably have subsequent seedings in the second season, just to make sure we don't have any areas that need to be treated. Again, the seed mix will be something that we could adjust it if need be. I don't think it needs to. We also thought about doing some, planting some single species of native species, propagules, and put the seeding in certain spots. Maybe that's going to be happening in areas where we might have had a little compaction, which we had to treat to uncompact, so we don't have soils that do not receive runoff. And that's a concern that we've talked about before. In those areas, the travel areas, is to basically York rake those and break up the topsoil a little bit, and then do the second seeding, so that we don't have areas that do not allow for infiltration. And we might even collect some seed from appropriate plants in the meadow and use those as well, so we can have local genotypes for those of us to think about these things. And again, it will be a minimum 2-year thing for establishment, and then once it's established, there will be a twice-annual mowing to be established after the second year, following the initial establishment. We anticipate that the mowing would take place probably the last week of June, possibly also the last week of September or first week of October, and we will establish a mowing height that's not any lower than 6 inches from the ground, so that wouldn't have an effect on propagative values of the species that are being established. And most likely we'll also be providing some kind of a memo or report to the commission at the end of every year, letting you know how we're doing and whether we need to go to a 3-year. So based on all that, again, I believe that this does represent a feasible improvement alternative as far as direct and indirect impacts. I don't think we can really talk that this is going to be an impact to wetland functions and values. There are none that are offered now by the lawn, or minimal at least, and so we'll end up with, I believe, a higher functioning wetland. And I don't think there's going to be any other impacts that are adverse to the wetlands that are wooded or have been not be maintained as lawn. I think this is my quick run through. And I will stop here and see if there are any questions that arise.
Thank you, George. Eric, do you have anything to add on your end before we open it up to the commission for questions and comments from the commission members?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Right, so we'll, since there's nobody seated here, we're just gonna go in alphabetical order, for comments. Emily?
I have no comments. I have no questions. This is extremely clear, and thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dave Fox?
Hi. I did have a kind of a question. I'm glad that the species include shade tolerant, because it seems like there's going to be quite a bit of shade here, and usually you don't think of a meadow as a shady place. At least I don't. I don't know, botanically maybe they are, but when you see pictures, meadows are sunny places. I was wondering, even in the dry side of the meadow or the wet meadow, do you have any existing solar arrays that are similar, that have those type of undergrowth, and are those working out well?
So that's a good question. This is the second one that I've worked on that is in a meadow. I have one in Goshen, which was just established. So I really cannot tell you how this is going to go until this season is over, or at least it's midstream. I can tell you, if you look at the table A, which is the seed mix, that there are several species in there that I typically find in semi-shade situations. You can see from the bottom, blue flag. Believe it or not, you can find that a semi-shade situation. The white turtle head, the ditch stonecrop to a lesser degree, and then going up from there, sensitive fern to a lesser degree. Bladder sedge is definitely shade tolerant. So is bamboo sedge, and to a lesser extent, hop sedge. And red top, you can also find that in semi-shade. So this is not a deep shade. I think I can't characterize it as semi-shade because there's a lot of indirect irradiation, solar radiation that's going to be coming, because you're not shading from all sides. You're only shading mostly from one side, or from the top and one side. So I think this will be fine.
Okay, thank you. One other quick one. I think this had come up in our previous discussions. The potential to need to maybe put mulch or something along the drip line.
Yes.
Is that still going to be thought about?
Absolutely, because as you probably realize, not everything is going to be nice and beautifully vegetated and dense immediately. So the idea was that at the drip edge, we will put down a course of wood chips, or not too thick, enough so that it takes the velocity of the water coming off, and that will probably naturalize, and vegetation will grow in it and over it over time. But at least it's going to be there for a period of time to take that initial velocity of flow that's coming off the edge.
Very good. Thank you. That's it for me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bob Eisner?
Robert, are you there? Shoot.
I saw a pop-up on the chat that he said he had muted himself, and he wondered if he
Okay.
could vote even though he's muted. Can he vote through chat?
Based on my experience, if he's on chat, he can't talk. We're not going to hear him because that's what I was doing.
Okay, hang on, 'cause based on my experience. Yeah, all right, here we go. La la la, listening. I joined, but I'm muted. Can I vote by chat?
Okay.
Um,
We don't want any hanging chats when it comes to voting.
I contact here. Let's see, do you have any questions for the applicant?
Something just popped up. Move on, it's okay.
Move on, it's okay. Okay, move on, all right, whatever. I don't know. All right. Hey, you know, we're trying here. Okay, move on, it's okay. Okay.
Mark Simpson?
I have no questions.
All right, Jay Tulin?
No questions.
Guy Wolf?
Uh-oh.
Oh, Guy, you gotta unmute yourself.
No
There you go.
questions.
Thank you.
Yep.
And just check, Richard, are you on?
Yeah, I'm here. I don't have any questions.
Okay, thank you.
I had a couple questions. When we did our site visit, I mean, it was January, so there was kind of frozen, you can tell there was a lot of frozen water in the ground. It was very crunchy, and there was still some wet sections where my feet were sticking down a little bit. Is the amount of water in there going to make it difficult for over time to support the posts that are driven in? I'm worried about like settlement or something based on the amount of water in the ground. I don't know if that's for the engineer or the soil scientist, but either one.
Yeah, I have a view on that. The soils here are silt loams to very fine sandy loams, and so they're pretty darn tight, and they actually get somewhat tighter because of the fact that you have an overburden as you go with depth. So in my view, there shouldn't be any issues about this soil holding the stakes in place. That's number one. And the water wouldn't affect it because there's only water in the pores amongst the soil particles. So there's not a lot of water. It just looks like there's a lot of water because it expresses itself in the spring at the soil surface. And I think one of the other things that we mentioned is that we're going to avoid the wet part of the year, which is spring, as far as installation is concerned. So some of that issue goes away by doing the installation in the drier portion. And believe me, this thing dries up in the summer. There's not a lot of water here, but it is obviously quite wet in the spring.
Okay. And a question to the applicant, are you all right with the town's recommendations and the items for consideration on this, or A through J?
Did you hear the question? It's referring to the agenda review and the comments on the agenda review, which
Yeah, we had
matched what
reviewed
had been
that.
there previously.
Yep, we had reviewed that, and we were fine with those comments.
I Actually, I had a question maybe for the town, on F of that. It says at the end of the useful life of the solar panels, all equipment shall be removed and disposed, and then you set up a natural metal. But is that just for that particular panel? Because like, I'm saying, if in 15, 20 years, panels are so much more efficient and productive that they decide to replace the panels with new panels, that's still considered the life of the solar panel.
Yeah, they could be replaced in kind. The intent was that it's not considered impervious like a parking lot. And 30 years from now, folks think, oh, well, they had solar panels there. What difference is it if we put a parking lot or a building?
Okay.
So the intent, yeah, they could replace in kind if more efficient technology becomes available. But when they're done utilizing this as a solar farm or solar field, that it be returned to a natural state.
Okay. That's good. All right, that's all the questions I had. Is there, anybody care to make a motion on the?
Well, hang on, because it's a public hearing.
Oh, that's right.
So first thing, if I can, I know we didn't have many comments from commissioners, but we'll come back, we'll ask you one more time before we end, but is there anyone have any other question for the applicant that they'd like to ask now? Okay, hearing none. We've had two gentlemen join us, and I'm gonna just confirm that there's no they are here for other matters this evening, so there are two other people, but they're not here regarding this. And I've got one person. It's a phone call allowed, and I don't know if it's seen on the screen. It's an 860-878-4785. So I'm not sure if that person is on to comment on this application, but if you are, you're welcome to do so now.
Shannon, can you hear me? This is Robert.
Yes. Okay, that's you. So, sorry, I didn't realize that was you. Okay.
Well, thanks for unmuting me. No questions.
Okay, I didn't realize you were over there. That's interesting. Anyway, okay. So it would seem that there's no other public comment. There's no one else has called in that's not a recognized number. So I think we're all set.
So I'll do a last call for any other questions. Close the hearing. Any other questions? Okay. Chair will entertain a motion to close the hearing, public hearing. I don't need that.
We can just close it?
I'll just
Close it, okay.
We'll close the public hearing. Are there, Chair will entertain a motion on the application?
So we need one of you to make a motion for the application. Anyone?
This is Robert, so moved.
Thank you. We need a second.
I'll do a second this morning.
Second is Jay.
Thank you.
Okay. The motion for application has been made and seconded. All those in favor say,
Aye.
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 All right, anybody opposed? Okay, motion for the application carries.
Okay, and Robert, just to clarify, it's a motion to approve with the conditions as noted on the agenda review?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you. Okay. One down and a handful more to go. George and everyone from Earthlight, thank you very much for participating and joining on this adventure with us. We appreciate it. The formal documents, meeting notes, approval letters, et cetera, will be forthcoming within the week or so.
Okay, much appreciated.
Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Yes,
Thank
and
you.
stay healthy, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care now. Bye-bye.
Good night.
So that's, all right.
All right, the next item, agenda, Ace Properties LLC, Lot 7, Peggy Lane.
Yep, and we've got it right here. So let me zoom in. So the representative for the applicant is here this evening. If you can give your name.
Hi, my name is Todd Clark, Clark Land Survey, representing Ace Properties, Adam Garrett and partner. I believe a couple of weeks ago we went over this. You saw we were looking to put a single-family home on a vacant lot, a lot of record. There are wetlands on the adjoining property, which is now owned by Ace Properties as well. George Logan had flagged those last summer, I believe, and we've done our field survey since then. We've done quite a bit of work with Bruce here to get the plan to his liking. The last issue we had with him was flow off the driveway, which we can't.
Yeah, it's a touch screen.
Okay, sorry.
Don't touch, yeah. Don't touch the touch screen. There we go.
Bruce had asked that we get a right to drain from the neighboring property. Next thing I heard is a property bought that land, so of course we'll get the right to drain. The water does tend to flow naturally to the wetlands, which is, in my view, beautiful wetland. Has a nice variety of plants. We actually sit on what they call Yorkton's made land, or urban land. We did have a question about a well of water service. Initially, we thought we were going to have to go with water service because the property corner was 197 feet to the water main and Route 6. Adam has since told me that they received a waiver stating that they did not have to install a water main to the property and that Connecticut Water was okay with them utilizing private well. So we've shown a well on the property. Nearest corner of the house to the wetlands is about 59 feet. Very little disturbance. They've used a raised ranch here where there's hardly any grading that fits in there quite nicely with the existing land. Roof leaders all directed to underground storage to handle the stormwater management requirements. Overflow would simply be a 4-inch PVC to grade. Even that structure is more than 50 feet from the wetlands, so properly implemented, we don't believe this will cause impact to the wetlands. Do you have any questions that I've not addressed? I'd like to answer them, try to answer them now.
We'll go through the commission backwards, alphabetically. Guy Wolf. You have any questions?
No, I don't have any questions.
Jay Doolin,
No questions here.
Mark Simpson,
I have no questions.
Robert Eisner,
No questions.
Dave Fox,
No questions here.
okay. Emily Burke,
No questions from me either.
and Rich Berlanti.
No questions.
Okay, the only question I had was on the water, and you've answered that. So now, when the right to drain situation, because, is that paperwork they have to file with that property, or?
Right, so because the landowner owns both properties, he'll simply grant himself an easement or a right to drain over the adjacent property, file it in the land records, and we'll be all set. So we'll just require that to be completed prior to, I don't know if Bruce will want it prior to the building permit or prior to the CO, but generally that's, it's done at that time. and it's fairly standard.
Okay. So the first thing we need to do is determine significance. Is there a opinion out there on whether this is a significant or not a significant use of the property?
I move it's not significant.
I second that emotion.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I think this house, the property is between, the veterinarian and another existing house. And I think that the distance to the wetland area is kind of significant, so I don't think it's significant. So, is there a motion to determine?
Yeah, we did that, so we've got Guy and Mark, motion and second, and we just need all.
All those in favor of saying that this is not a significant use of the property?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? All
Okay.
right, that motion carries. Are there any further questions on this from anybody before we ask for a motion? I'll ask the applicant, are you compliable with the recommendations for consideration and the?
It's in the agenda review, I can mail that out.
Yes, that's fine, thank you.
All right, the chair will entertain a motion to accept, the application, or not accept, to approve the application for 7 Peggy Lane.
So moved.
Was it with the 10 items?
There's a shorter list for this one, there's, A through E,
Okay. For those items.
yes.
Yeah, with those items.
Thank you.
Can we have a second for the motion?
Wait a second.
I'll second it.
Thank
Can I
you.
second it tonight?
Sure.
Awesome.
All right, so we have a motion made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for all the meetings.
Of course, yeah, no problem. I'm gonna skip item 2 for now, if that's okay, and I'll come back to it. We'll do, item 3,
All right.
which is Westwood
Westwood
Country Club. And Mr. Zomer is with us this evening.
Just go with, give your name for the record.
Sure. Mark Zomer, 258 Covenant Road, Farmington. As you can see here, we want to put a new deck on the existing, off of the existing deck. Replace the existing deck and extend it out from the front of the building about 40 feet.
So the total area will be just over 1,200 square feet.
Yes, approximately, yes.
Okay. And this is the bar shed that was approved?
That's the portion that was already approved, yes.
Approved in the fall?
Yep.
Okay. And then just for reference for all of you, this is the wetland delineation that was done back in 2014. Liz had worked with Davidson Environmental on this. And you can see the blue wetland line. This building here with the 20 is the clubhouse. So the deck is going to be in this area, clearly in the upland, and that bar shed is going to be here at near the cart path. Can you tell us how construction, concrete piers?
Yeah, we're going to put sonotubes and of course we'll have drawings for the building department, when the time comes.
Sure. And any of the material that's excavated when they do the sonotubes will be removed from the property?
Yep.
Okay. Do you have anything else that you'd like to, that's kind of straightforward. But...
Yeah, no, it's really nothing else I can say.
Okay.
How much of an extension is this? Like,
It's going to be about 31 feet from the existing deck.
So on that drawing, the yellow is the existing, and then the red is the new?
Correct.
All right. Make determination of the activities permitted by right.
Well, do we want to see, do we want to see if anyone has any questions?
Yes.
Sorry, I'm jumping all over on you.
Are there any questions? We'll start with Rich Berlandi.
No questions.
Emily?
None from me.
I lost my list here.
Dave Fox? I gotcha.
No questions.
Thank you. Robert?
No questions.
Mark?
I'm just curious about what type of materials would be the decking be made of?
Well, we're hoping to put AZAC.
I didn't hear that.
AZAC?
AZAC?
Oh, okay. All right, thank you. No other questions.
The best of what you've got.
Okay. Anything else, Mark, or you're good?
No, I'm good.
Thank you. Jay?
I'm guessing the answer to this question is no, but I'm going to ask it anyway, only because I've played there. Where you're proposing to do construction, is that going to impact the direction of where golf carts may be going? Is it going in that direction or the other towards the parking lot where golf carts would be going, which might impact where people like me that play that course would be taking their, their clubs when they play?
Yeah, no, it won't affect any direction.
Okay, I didn't think so, but I just wanted to ask because I do play there, and it's not, doesn't sound like it would be any hardship to, even if it was, but I just was curious. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay.
Guy, any questions?
I have no questions, but I think that this is an application we should accept and not grant as a matter of right.
Okay. Duly noted. Hang on. Ned, do you have any questions? Or are you ready to go to the determination?
No, you had, the construction is just going to be sonotubes for support, and it's very minor
Yes.
construction that property.
Yeah, the height of the deck is going to be no higher than what's there now.
Okay.
The end of it, when it comes out.
That's all I had for a question. For determination, is the activity permitted? To me, it looks like we already have a deck there, and it's just an extension of an existing use. So I would tend to think it is a permitted use by right, but I'll entertain a motion.
So we need either, because Mr. Wolf indicated that he feels we should accept the application. So we need a motion for one or the other, and then we can take a vote. Does everyone understand? Do I need to explain this to anyone? Does anyone have any questions on what's being asked of them?
No, but if we just for my own understanding, if we accepted the application, that would mean there'd have to be a public hearing, right?
Nope.
Oh.
Nope. You have to determine that it's a significant activity in order to warrant a public hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Accept the application simply means that we're here this evening. You can have any questions. It gives the public 14 days, and we will be back here. It won't be 14 days. It'll be 1 month because we've already canceled the April 1st meeting, which I have yet to inform everybody, but that's what's coming up later. So it would go and proceed exactly like the Peggy Lane unless for some reason you felt that it was a significant activity, and then it would be a public hearing.
Okay, that's the difference. Sorry. Thank you.
Okay, so if we accept it as a use by right, then no further information is needed, and the applicant will work with staff to proceed, similar to what we've done with some of the, say, Eagle Scout projects, some of the things that Mr. Zanke's brought before us, some swimming pools we have done that with, so something to that level.
I did have an observation. The bar shed, that was an application that was approved, not as of right, correct?
I believe so, correct, because additional information about where it was and what it's going to look like and how it's going to function was, and its mobility was needed to, for the commission in order to further understand the functionality of that element.
I'm just looking at the sizes of the two red areas. And this red area is about, I don't know, 8 bar sheds. Large.
Right, I think it had more to do with understanding the use and how it, because of the use, then its potential impact in exactly how it's going to be placed, framed, constructed, its mobility, et cetera.
Oh, okay.
So, so yes, you're correct, it was a full application. It really wasn't based on area as more as understanding the use to be able to clearly identify that there wasn't an impact to the wetland.
Thank you.
Certainly. Okay, so everyone understands what the question is. So it doesn't matter who, we need someone to make a motion one way or the other to either allow this to proceed by right or to accept the application.
I move that it be accepted by application.
Okay, we'll need a second to that.
That'd be a second for me.
Okay,
Motion is made and second to accept the application. All say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion to accept the application is approved.
okay. Hang on a second, Mark. Okay, any need for a site walk for this?
I don't think I need to.
Okay,
Anybody else?
anyone else want a site walk?
No, in the interest of social distancing, I'll waive off.
Okay, well, I mean, it's public space. You could also go at any time if you're, that curious, and take a look.
Well,
So,
if it's open for play anytime soon, I'll be there anyway, so.
Okay, so we're gonna say no to the site walk,
Okay.
at least not a formal one. Do you want to determine significance this evening?
That would be fine. I'd say it's not significant.
I'll second that. Or it's not a motion, but
I moved it's not significant.
now I'll second it.
Okay,
All right, motion is made and seconded. This is not a significant activity. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion passes.
okay. Is there any additional information that you need the applicant to provide prior to the next meeting? Anything specific other than making sure that the permit is in place for this activity?
Nope.
No.
Nope.
No.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. All right. Okay. Now you get to listen to me for the rest of the evening.
Next item on the agenda is Juliana Poole,
So I'm gonna
20 Elizabeth Road.
check. It doesn't look. Todd, have you been able to join in?
Tim Goodell is on the line, yes.
Okay. Oh, Tim, sorry. Todd, Tim, sorry.
That's
My bad.
That's no problem at all.
Thank you. Okay. Juliana Poole. And are you at a computer, Tim, that you can see, or are you just calling in from the road?
I'm just calling in.
Okay. So I have up on the screen The assessor's map for for 20 Elizabeth Road, you can see the house, you can see the dimensions for the pool towards the backyard, and see how it is set back from the property lines and from the rear of the property. And then the next figure is the aerial map. The brown line is the sanitary sewer line. The purple line is the storm drain line. The sanitary sewer line and the storm sewer line are on the neighboring property. The application is for 20, and the pool will be located basically in this general region where the hand is moving on the computer screen. Tim had provided a summary of work for us so that we can understand the scope of work and how the activity will proceed and the construction approach. Tim, since you're on the line, do you want to quickly give a summary for the general way that construction proceeds for one of your Giuliano pool projects?
Certainly, just at a high level. So the project is the construction of an 18 by 36 in-ground swimming pool. The patio dimensions are to be determined. On average, however, it's typically about 4 feet around the perimeter, and there also would be a 4-foot safety fence. Points specific to wetlands consideration, the area of disturbance would not exceed 20 feet around the perimeter of the pool edge. All of the materials that are generated, anything that's graded or not necessarily dug out, is not stockpiled. It's removed by Giuliano's. There is no discharge of chemicals or pool water. There is grade on the property to a slight degree. We would not leave a grade any greater than 2 to 1. There would be silt fence. There would be hay mats employed as needed to prevent any kind of erosion. With that, I guess the general process that we go through, obviously, we excavate the hole for the pool. We then go into the construction of galvanized steel panels that go into the perimeter of the pool. We then prepare the pool. It's vermiculite and liner that would go in. We backfill with sand approximately 3 feet out from the perimeter of the galvanized steel panels, and that sits, that sand obviously is for concrete purposes, concrete patio. That sits for 3 weeks, and then we would then come in. The patio is poured, the fence is established, and I'll backtrack a little bit. So when the excavation is done, the hole is dug. Obviously, there's temporary fencing that's put up. Silt fence obviously is in place throughout, but what you have in front of you, or what was provided as far as the process that we go through in terms of Giuliano's care for and understanding of the wetlands considerations. We've done this for many years. We've done many of these types of projects, and we do take the utmost care in recognizing and respecting what we're doing in terms of the wetlands. This is a little bit different. Based on the GIS work that we've done, that I've done, wetlands pretty much encompasses the entire property, the entire area. So this is a little bit different, but obviously we would respect any kind of the slope that's there. We would we would prevent any kind of erosion or any kind of degradation into wetlands in the area. I would open it up for questions.
Sure, thank you very much. Okay, you want me to run through everybody?
No,
You got it? Okay.
So alphabetical order, Rich Berlandy, you have any questions?
No questions.
Emily Burke,
No questions.
Dave Fox,
No questions.
Bob Eisner,
No questions.
Mark Simpson,
No questions.
Jay Tulin,
No questions.
and Guy Wolf.
Back to me.
do you have-
Yeah, Guy, it's you.
I was wondering where the wetland line was. It doesn't seem to be on the map.
No, because the wetland line, if I put it on the aerial map, the wetland line actually comes up right through the middle of the house and down around through here based on the GIS wetland delineation for the property based on the soil surveys. So this is the area that has traditionally been used as lawn. I'm sure you're familiar, this neighborhood predates wetland regulations. So for our purposes, this is the undeveloped, so that's where the 10 is. Outside of here is the undeveloped area. The sewer easement is kept mowed anyhow, so these people have been using this backyard as a backyard for years. So basically for our purpose, if you were to dig in here, there's probably perhaps wetland soils, but the area that is undisturbed and has not been used as the backyard is back here off the property.
Thank you. Has your office had any conditions that it wanted on this?
So we asked that the erosion control includes silt fence and silk sock, and that the discharge of pool water not be directed to the wooded wetland area to the rear of the home. And I believe, Tim, I think when we were speaking earlier today, you said that the pool water doesn't have to be discharged anymore based on the technology as for these pools.
That's correct.
So
does that mean
we'll leave
it can be?
I'm sorry, excuse me?
Does that mean it can be? And who makes that decision?
Well, he said it's not, that's not what the pools, they don't need to do that. There isn't a discharge on a regular basis from these pools like there had been 20 years ago. And
That's correct. And as an example, for example, if we needed to remove pool water, typically after pool water sits for a period of time, any kind of chlorination or any kind of chemicals have leached their way out. But if we had to remove or to take the pool level down for whatever reason, if there was a liner leak or something of that nature, we would pump it to a truck and remove it that way. It would not be pumped to the ground.
Good. Fine, those are the only questions I had.
Yep.
okay.
Okay. I wasn't clear on, is this a concrete pool or is this a metal wall with a liner pool?
It is not concrete. It's a vermiculite, which is a very soft. It is a mix of concrete, but it's soft concrete, and it's a liner that's over it. The vermiculite sits on top of the galvanized steel panels at the top anyway. On the bottom portion of the pool, it sits directly on the virgin soil, and then the liner is placed over that.
Okay. And, so when they close this in the winter, they don't have to lower the pool level? I mean, that's why I'm kind of curious about when you said, talked about the water doesn't need to be emptied from the pool periodically. So they don't have to lower the water level for the winter closure?
It depends. It's a great question. It typically is lowered just below the level of the skimmer. So depending on where that level is. But again, you know, for areas that are not necessarily in wetlands, we would truck out that kind of, or in wetlands. My apologies. In a wetland situation, we would, if we had to remove that water to take it down below the skimmer level, we would pump that out to a truck. That is correct. It is when we close up a pool, we do typically take it down below skimmer level.
Okay. But so then and the consideration in the recommendations, don't discharge of pool water directly into the wooded wetland area. So that, with that stipulation, then that property has a requirement that lowering the pool level that much for closure, the water would have to be taken away and not drained out into the wetland. Just so you understand that requirement and you're okay with it?
Yes.
That's all I had. Any further questions? All right, so we'll entertain a motion to accept the application.
We put it on, make a determination if it's a use incidental to a residential use or to accept the application.
I would move that it's a use consistent with the use of a house, in this case.
Okay.
Permitted as of right under the regulations.
Okay.
Okay, is there a second for that?
I'll second that. It's Rich.
Okay.
My question is, if we prove it is permitted as a right, we still get to put the stipulations on it that?
I will follow up as part of the building permit application.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so then, motion is made to permit the use as a right. All, and made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay. All right, Tim, I'll follow up with you tomorrow.
Thank you, Shannon. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you for joining on the call.
Yep. Stay well, everyone. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, you too.
Okay, moving right along.
Go back to item 2.
We're going to go back to item 2, and so this is.
Can I just ask a quick question? I just want to make sure I understand what we just did. Does that mean that we've approved this application, or is it still going to be on a future agenda?
Nope, you will not see that again. It's okay. It'll go through the building permit process, and Bruce Steer and myself will follow up through construction. And as part of the building permit and final sign-off, we'll add the condition about the pool water, and obviously during the construction, we will be monitoring the erosion control.
But Westwoods is going to be on the next agenda, whenever that is.
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to make sure I got that. Thank you.
No problem. Okay, 69 Forest Hills Drive. The attorney has, in writing, requested a continuance. He understands that they are waiving their 10-day right for a show cause hearing. The attorney and the homeowner, they have hired a surveyor, a land surveyor, to verify their property boundary, and they have engaged Davison Environmental, who they have a licensed forester as well as a number of soil scientists and wetland scientists within their group that will be reviewing this property. Due to the timing, obviously, and a variety of factors, they weren't able to have all that information ready for this evening, so they have requested a continuance. I will continue to work with them to make sure that they are continuing to move ahead, and we will plan on hearing from them at the next meeting. So that's really the only update for that.
And in your opinion, have they been cooperating with the town in regards to?
They have been very responsive and very cooperative.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's the size of the diameters of these trees that were removed?
Some are more sizable than others. I honestly did not have a tape measure out with me when Bruce and I walked the property. Some of them are fairly sizable. I will caveat that, though. There are also some, the trunk of the tree and the stump that was left, clearly there was rot showing in some of these. Not all of them, but I think it'll be important to have. I'm glad they went with Davison because he'll be able to speak to both aspects of this, the health of the trees that were taken down, as well as the quality of the potential wetland feature that is on/immediately adjacent to their property.
Yeah, I figured when you said something about a forester, I said, oh, they're going to check and say, well, there are a lot of unhealthy trees, so, but that doesn't excuse them to remove them without permission.
No, but again, some of them I think were like legitimately the stumps. There was very evident rot of hollowing going up through the tree. So, so nonetheless, they have been very responsive and are proceeding accordingly. So
there is a problem, like if they're 42 inches in diameter, in circumference or diameter?
It's diameter at chest height is how it's, and I think it's forward. I think anything over 30 inches actually is referred to as a specimen tree.
That's
but again, we're tying into the health, and that's,
yep.
I'd have to look to see how the specimen tree works with respect to an existing lot as opposed to when we're creating a subdivision and we're trying to preserve a specimen tree within a subdivision. Once it transfers to the property owner, I'm not exactly sure what rights we have to that.
But if somebody removes trees in a wetlands area, that's something you can't do without permission, right?
Correct. The tree removal, so assuming the pond edge that is visible on the map and that we could see when we were out there, the pond edge and the limit of wetland are one and the same. We'll assume for now there's no adjacent wetland soils. I don't know. From the pond, roughly from the pond edge to the rear of the home was kind of right at 150 feet, so virtually in the entire backyard is in the upland. And yes, if someone were taking down a handful of trees in their backyard in the upland review area, we would probably never know, and it wouldn't really be a concern. It has to do with the quantity of trees and now the proximity to this water feature that has raised concern. If I had gone up there and there were only 3 or 4 trees down, I probably wouldn't even, this would not be we wouldn't be having these conversations. There was multiple trees removed right up to the water edge.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep. So I expect to have the attorney and homeowner and their professionals available for the next meeting. They are aware that our meetings are now, might be a little sporadic or non-traditional, as the case may be.
Yeah.
So that's it for agenda items, and then
And we issued the cease and desist order.
the cease and desist was issued on March 9th? March 9th, I believe, last Monday. I think Bruce and I were there on the 5th. I think it was a Friday, Thursday or Friday, but because we've got the 10-day show cause hearing, we waited to actually issue the written order on the 9th so we could have the show cause hearing today. Obviously, we didn't wait to get in touch with the homeowner. We contacted him immediately, and we're in touch with him on that Thursday and Friday, and then the written order was issued on the Monday. So we didn't have to try to get a special meeting in.
I'm sorry, Shannon. This is probably not a real important point, but it just popped into my head. Did this just happen to be observed, or did a neighbor report it to the town?
No, we received a phone call. There's no, there's absolutely no way this would have shown up on our radar screen. It's a
Well, that's why
flag
I'm
lot.
wondering how it came to your attention. Yeah, just curious. You know.
No, it's a flag lot, and it's an area of town where we don't have active work going on right now. Without someone calling, there's no way we would have found it.
Yeah.
I mean, look, it's off of Forest Hill, I'm not sure, Forest Hills Drive is down in the southern part off of Route 10, and it's kind of way tucked up. So, and with it being a flag lot, you wouldn't, even as you're driving Forest Hills Drive, should you do that, which unless you live up there, no one's heading up there at dead ends, you really can't see it from the road.
Yeah.
Just
So
as one
these
other
folks
follow.
They were probably surprised when you showed up there that,
Yes.
just, whatever. Okay. Just curious how this all came to pass.
And I'm just also wondering how we're going to know that there's no other cutting taking place in the intervening time.
Well, we can go up and take a look in the interim, but there's not much left to cut.
All right.
So I didn't count. I have photographs, but there's not much left to take down. So.
Yeah, and they're aware that they're on your radar now, so you know.
Yep, and we issued the cease and desist letter, so it's a legal document. He's got his attorney involved. We have photographic record evidence of what the condition was like when we were there. The front of the house and the driveway are well outside of the 150-foot upland review. So quite honestly, he can continue that whole front area and all the way down the driveway if he so chooses. It's outside of our regulated area.
Yeah.
So.
Do we know if he had a tree company do the work, or was he doing the work himself?
There was a company on site when we were there. They were chipping, and we were told that they were not the ones that cut, that somebody else cut, and they were brought in to chip. Again, there's no way for me to know.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's the homeowner's responsibility. And quite honestly, as you're starting to cut, if you look at the aerial, and if you're starting to cut up here, unless somebody had walked the property, somebody with a chainsaw cutting up here, okay, sure, no problem. You got to go a long way before you get down to here and you go, there's a little water down there. And at that point, it's done. But you couldn't get from here to here, and I don't know, there didn't seem to be a lot of invasive, like multiflora rose and thicket with that. I suppose you could have walked down prior to, but one wouldn't necessarily do that when you get to a job site and you're told, hey, cut. I want you to cut from here to here. So.
Yeah.
So do we need a motion to continue this, or do we?
No, he's made the request to continue that. So they aren't here, and there's not really there's nothing to act on at this point until they come in with additional information.
I was wondering the same thing, if you needed a motion, so, whatever.
No.
At what point would we, take the site visit if we wanted to?
Well, they've got to come in first.
Okay.
So we'll have them in first, and then we'll go from there.
Okay.
So, okay. I'm going to move right on to planner's report. So we've got two properties that happen to be back-to-back. Bruce and I have been to both of them. Two separate calls, two separate requests. One, it's just kind of coincidence that they're back-to-back. One really does not relate to the other, and the impact from one is not impacting the other. So we'll start with 30 Hatters. This is Hatters Lane. When you get to Colton, it switches to Diamond Glen, but the address for this property is 30 Hatters Lane. Approximately 15 years ago, they were permitted to have a pool put in. Again, this was, incidental, customary use to the backyard. There is a stream that runs, and I say stream, it's a water course that runs and is culverted here under Colton, from Colton to Hatters. The water course runs along the edge, the eastern edge of 30 Hatters, comes along the south edge here not on the property line, it's in from the property line at the back edge of the pool is where this water course comes. It makes a 90-degree angle here on the property line, and then comes along the northern property of 24 Hatters, and you can see it here pop out, and then it continues along, this is now 20 Dorset. I think I said 24 Hatters, I meant 24 Dorset, I apologize. This comes into 20 Dorset, and then it crosses over and comes into the pond that we saw as part of the Main Gate application at the back end of Main Gate. So this is a very large watershed, and this water course, at the time this subdivision was put in, this water course was rerouted. And this subdivision, I pulled the plans, I want to say it dates back to the 70s. I had pulled all the plans, but this subdivision has been in for quite some time. So that's just kind of some background for you. When this pool was put in, a small retaining wall, boulder retaining wall was put in with this pool. The stormwater flow, just regular rain flow over the edge of the boulder wall, as well as the flow within the water course, has compromised the retaining wall, and it requires some repair. So we have instructed the homeowner to get a contractor, get someone in place. We need to set up a site meeting and work with the contractor as to how they are doing this, preferably low flow time, so that, because there is going to have to be some re-stabilization of the base course of the retaining wall and then come back up. But it likely, and hopefully they'll put some stone in behind the retaining wall for some drainage, which does not appear that they did the first time around 15 years ago. So the water, any hydrostatic pressure is just pushing against the wall, and it just pushed the stones. There's no way to relieve any of the water pressure that would have built up behind the wall. So I wasn't going to have them come in for a permit. Again, we're working with them. It's a repair of an existing feature. Obviously, if anyone feels different, then let me know, and we will rework this accordingly. 24 Dorset, this has to do more with the water course stabilization and the embankment stabilization. There's silt, sediment, et cetera, has accumulated within the water course and has caused now more of a meandering of the stream because of deposits in the stream, and now it's changed location and is eroding into their yard towards the home. Nothing overly concerning at this point, but again, they want to do some work. So Bruce and I met with them, working with them. We gave them, some suggestions on embankment plantings and embankment stabilization, and have also given them permission to remove 1 or 2 dead trees that are overhanging. We've requested that they leave the stump, but to remove the dead trees, and to also clean out some of the material. There's branches, there's leaves, there's a variety of things that have just accumulated in that stream because it's somewhat flashy, right? If there's a storm, then it's cruising along, and then the storm dies off, it settles out, and all the material settles out. So they're going to do some of this work. Their intent is to do it themselves by hand. Again, we have asked if they choose to hire a contractor to have a meeting with us on the property prior to the contractor getting engaged. I have all of that in writing with both homeowners. Again, these are 2, it's just kind of coincidence that they're back to back. One isn't related to the other, and the homeowners aren't, this isn't something they're working on together. They're 2 independent items.
Shannon, is anything living in this? Is it livable water? I mean,
from a critter standpoint, I don't think, I wouldn't suspect, there's no fish.
But
whether or not there's, little critters, I'm sure there are little critters in there. It's not showing up on the NDDB diversity database. I'll double check, but I'm fairly confident that this area is not. So there isn't a threatened or endangered critter or plant life there. And basically, it's basic stream maintenance that needs to get done. If these folks were doing this year in and year out, a little stream maintenance each year, then it wouldn't have gotten to this point. So some of this is just the watercourse maintenance that needs to be taking place, and now it's gotten to the point where their hand's been forced, and it needs to now, it's kind of a bigger project rather than an annual small project or maintenance. No different than really cleaning up our gardens in the spring and all the branches and stuff that drops on the lawn. The same stuff's dropping on the water courses and changing directions of the water course.
I understand the concern, but yeah, I think it needs to be monitored.
Certainly.
Any other comments or questions?
Again, just my idle. I guess I'm starting to feel my oats here a little bit, starting to ask questions about things. I'm just wondering, because and I know this is probably different work, but I'm just thinking about the comparison because you're talking about repairs. Do they need to come before us, kind of like Scott Zenke did with the work that they're doing on Mountain Spring, which is also just repair work? Do they need to come before us with any of this stuff?
Yeah, Scott was doing culverts and.
No, I know it's different work. I just wondered because
it's up to you. It's up to you folks. Right now, I'm handling it at a staff level. So if you feel otherwise and feel a permit should come in, then.
How long is the silver?
I don't. I just was curious if that was part of the process.
The retaining wall. Let's see. The property, the water course comes down here. It's starting to cut into the property here because they have a little sitting area. The retaining wall is starting somewhere around here and comes the length of the pool and then drops off. It drops off. So it doesn't come the full, it certainly isn't the full width of the property, approximately half the width, maybe 2/3, but not more than that.
It's large boulders stacked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm not trying to give you more work than you guys already have, Shannon.
No, and that's why, these are the types of things that, we're looking at. These are the types of calls that we get. The homeowner called us and said, hey, what do I do about this? So we went out and took a look. Of course, she was hoping that it would, you know, the town was gonna go out and fix her retaining wall for her, so I think she was a little disappointed that that wasn't the case. I said, well, you put it in when you put your pool in, so guess who's responsible for it? So, nonetheless, you know, and at the time, because of the age of when this work was done 15 years ago, there isn't a wetland permit on file for it. So there was no wetland permit for this originally. If she was putting a pool in like this today, absolutely, there would be a wetland permit if we were starting from scratch, but we're not.
Maybe that's the comparison I'm thinking of, because the work that Scott and them are doing, admittedly, maybe different work, but a lot of that is due to age and need to, you know, fix those spaces, which I drive by like every day. But I just was curious, you know, if there was anything else they needed to do to be able to get other, you know, permission or whatever.
I would just comment on the retaining wall. Usually, you know, the old stone retaining walls, you don't get that much of groundwater back pressure built up. Usually it's a case of the water, you know, wearing down the soil in front of the stones, and the stones tend to move forward, and then the upper stones start to slide down, and so.
That's probably more of it, but there's probably a little bit of both. There was a weird pushing, it was kind of pushed out a little bit to make me think it's perhaps a hybrid of that situation going on.
Okay. Well, so I think the best way to handle it is to allow Shannon and the staff to continue to do this. If it turns into a larger project, like suddenly they decide, well, geez, I got to put in a concrete retaining wall here or something.
Oh,
like that,
absolutely.
then that would come before the council.
Right.
But if they're pretty much making repairs on it, you know, as small as they can and still be effective, then I think that would be, you know, that we can continue on this course and see what kind of repairs, what the repairs look like after some investigation is done.
Sure.
Is everybody okay with that on the commission?
Sounds like
I'm
a
okay.
good action.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
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 All right, thank you. Any other, do we have to
There's
approve the minutes?
approval of minutes from March 4th.
Chair entertain a motion to approve the minutes of March 4th, 2020.
So moved.
Second.
All right, been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And without any objection, we'll end the Inland Wetlands Commission meeting at 8:39. And we will start the Conservation Commission.
Okay. And the only item that I have at the moment is actually I do have two. Let me just make a note of something here. So the first item, the Land Acquisition Committee report I have for February 13th. They are working on the property for Mountain Road. You'll recall that's the area that we approved and supported for the purchase for the rerouting of the Metacomet Trail. So that purchase is going ahead, and that's being advanced. It's with the attorneys now, so all systems go on that. The public hearing for the Wollenberg property, which was on Meadow Road, was held on February 11th. The request for the 8-24 referral went to TPZ, and that was supported at TPZ, and then it was going back to Town Council. It says March 10th. I didn't see it, so it may be that it just is on hold, because they're juggling a number of things, obviously, at Town Council. We've been thrown a few curveballs last week and this week. So I don't know the exact disposition of that, but that is continuing to advance, and my guess is will be approved with the council, and then we'll also move through with the attorneys.
I think it was heard on March 10th because I was at the town council meeting.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, I get the notes from each council meeting, and I just can't remember.
Yeah.
We've been so focused on budget items and now Corona items that,
Yeah.
quite honestly,
Yeah.
purchase of a piece of property isn't hitting the radar screen. So, but that was it for land acquisitions. They canceled their March meeting because there of a variety of reasons. One was a conflict with a town council meeting, and there was no business that needed to be transacted that warranted getting everybody together. The only other thing I have for everyone is if you could mark your calendars, April 25th is the Household Hazardous Waste Collection Day and the townwide cleanup day and shredding and electronics disposal, et cetera. So as of now, this is still on the books to proceed. Obviously, that could change, but as of now, this is still, it is still being moved ahead. It has not been canceled as of yet. So as we did last year, we had some of you helping with verifying IDs coming up into the household hazardous waste area. So as you're coming up into the high school, we have a station where folks are checking IDs to make sure they're part of the member towns that participate with Farmington prior to proceeding through the circulatory course through there, through the high school parking lot. So if you could just mark your calendar and have it as a placeholder, because if it does go ahead, we will need some assistance. That would be helpful.
Forget about on the inland wetlands.
So that's, I had a couple of other things, so yeah, I'll just do some random. So, so because at the time that we were going through, the town manager asked us, so that's it for like kind of general stuff. And we can actually, we can go ahead, finish conservation, and then I'll handle that.
Conservation. Hey, are there any other questions of the conservation report?
Nope.
Okay,
No.
seeing none, call conservation meeting over at 8:45.
Can we approve the meeting minutes for March 4th? Sorry.
Okay, Chair, motion for conservation. Anybody?
Can we approve the minutes for conservation
So
March
moved
4th?
so moved by
Second.
Robert.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Second by Jay.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay,
It was breaking
all
up.
right.
Call the meeting of the Conservation Commission of meeting adjourned at 8:44, and reopen the Inland Wetlands Commission.
Well, no, we don't really. It's just kind of general discussion. So two things, or I guess really, we'll just say one. The April 1st meeting is the town manager had asked us to look at our agendas for moving out for the next month to 6 weeks. At the time, I didn't have the Westwoods Country Club had not been put on my radar, obviously, as you can tell, because it was a late add to the agenda. So we have, at the time, I had nothing that was going to carry over, so we canceled the April 1st meeting. So the April 1st meeting is canceled, so the next meeting will be April 15th. And at that time, then, we will pick up the show cause hearing, we'll pick up Westwoods Country Club, and any of a number of things that come before us at that point. Depending upon the situation 4 weeks from now will depend as to whether we are live and in person or if we were going to go virtual again. So we will just continue to monitor that and make the appropriate decision as we get close. And it may be, hopefully, maybe we're over the peak and it was a mild peak, that we do a hybrid and allow both. We'll have some in person and some long distance or virtual, and we'll go from there, but we'll tackle that as it comes. But for now, the April 1st meeting is canceled.
Good.
Okay?
I would just like to take a moment to thank Shannon and the staff for arranging this meeting. I think it would have been difficult to get a quorum. People are concerned, and rightly so, about the coronavirus, and this was an excellent idea to help get it together, and we really appreciate all your efforts in getting this done so we could have the meeting.
Oh, you're welcome.
Agree
I'm
with
glad
that
it-
motion.
Thank you.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And
Okay.
Ned, thank you very much for running the meeting.
Totally agree. This was great. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks again.
Be safe, all.
Thank you.
That was interesting. Doing the meeting.